You're in the shadows, building castles in the sky. Seems like you won't ever find what you want when the world is only black and white. But I can see behind your eyes. Try to find something to move you. Yeah, vultures circling around and singing hallelujah. Yeah, they're talking, but they really ain't got much to say. Your words are like a bolt and let it ricochet. You've been trying to numb it all out, fading into the crowd, but I see you now. Oh, you're beautiful color.
Welcome to Crosspoint. I'm Abby, and we want you to know that no matter where you are or what you believe, we're here to help you find community, whether it's online or in person. And like that song we just heard, we believe that God designed the church to be a beautiful tapestry of people, a place for everybody, regardless of your race, gender, sexual orientation, or where you are on your spiritual journey, or even what part of the community or world you're from. In fact, that's what we're talking about today. How Jesus not only invites, but blows through social norms to make room for everyone in his circle. So we're so glad that you're here today. Now the cool thing is, today is part 3 of our annual At the Movies teaching series, where we take a look at some of the biggest movies of the year and the spiritual fibers that weave in, around, and through each of these films. If it's your first time with us, you've got some free movie tickets coming your way. That's right, I'm not kidding. We love to give stuff away. All you have to do is scan this QR code, tell us about yourself and where we can send your free tickets, and we'll drop those in the mail for you this week, simply as our way of saying thank you for joining us. And if someone invited you, we'd love to know that too. Now, before we dive into today's movie, a couple of ways you might want to consider about connecting around here. First, for all of our rising 7th through 12th grade students, CSM, Crosspoint Student Ministry, is continuing our 4-week kickoff this school year again this weekend with an amazing event called The Chase. Take a look. The Chase is a multi-week team-building experience filled with fun challenges, opportunities for you to make new friends, and get some encouragement to help you start the year strong. Each week is totally designed to be an easy entry point for new students. So if you have never been to CSM before, or if you know a student that hasn't been, we would love to see you or see them this Sunday night. Hey, Labor Day is right around the corner. I know, so hard to believe. We want to invite you to our pre-Labor Day weekend after party on Thursday, August 28th. This is a great space to invite someone to come and join you on the Crosspoint campus for our Thursday evening early weekend service, and stay for the after party with some pub snacks, summer beverages, both the kid-friendly and the adult variety. as we kick off the holiday weekend early right here at Crosspoint. Plus, we want to help you plan ahead for that holiday weekend, as Sunday, August 31st, we will have an adjusted service schedule with the 9:30 a.m. Sunday service only. So make your plans now to connect with Crosspoint on this fun holiday weekend. And of course, you can also catch us all week right here online. All right, we've got a fantastic service for you today. If you've ever wondered if there's room in God's economy for you, wondered questions like, what does God really think of me? Or is there a place for me in his spiritual family? I'm so glad that you're here today, as Curt's gonna help us see not only how God invites, but makes room for us all, as we look at some of the things that Jesus had to say and discoveries from the recent hit movie, Mufasa, the Lion King. So let's check out the trailer.
It's time I tell you a story. A story of a cub, not much bigger than you.
So just to be clear, we're not in this story?
There's a lot of stories with all of us. Tell one of those.
Long before they became legends, Mufasa and the prince who would come to be known as Scar became brothers.
Hello, what's your name?
Mufasa.
I told you to wait for me. We can't just leave him here.
Rules are rules, Tucker. The king will never accept a stray.
I'm not a stray. I'm just lost.
We do not associate with outsiders. Tucker is the future king. We must protect the bloodline.
But, Dad, I saved his life. I have a secret, Mufasa. I always wanted a brother. I always wanted a brother. I always wanted a brother.
Sometimes I get a scent. It's barely a trace on the wind. And it smells like home. And then it's gone.
You and Tucker together, that is home. Now both of you go. Find your place in the circle of life.
The circle is broken. There will be one Lion King.
Mufasa, run!
We must fight together. If we fight, we die. Just to be clear, I never signed up for this.
I'm here to protect you, my brother.
Mufasa! This was a bad idea! We're alive! I did it! I saved us!
You were saying?
All right. Well, hey, welcome to At the Movies. Really excited to have you with us this weekend. We're going to take a look at this movie this weekend, really unpack some of the spiritual lessons we can learn. And it's really cool because this one has a lot of the character of God in it. We see this in some of the figures in this movie. And so we're excited to kind of unpack that. And we've got a whole bunch of people join us online. Let's make some noise for those in the online spaces this weekend. We just want you to know you're with us, not just watching, but you're part of our community this weekend. And so excited you're joining us. My name's Curt, and if you are here for the first time, we're excited to have you here, whether you're in the room, whether you are join us online, and you got free movie tickets coming your way. So we really do mean that. So if you haven't yet filled out the connection card, make sure you do that, and let us know where we can send those, and those will be coming and hitting your mailbox this week. Now, today we're going to be looking at Mufasa, and we're going to ask the question, we're going to take a look at how Jesus includes the outcasts, the misfits, the kind of the underdogs, the undersized. I mean, those of us who feel like, gosh, I don't know if there's room in God's economy for me. I just don't know if I'm made for that or God had a plan for that. So we're going to look at that today. And then next weekend, this is going to be super fun. We're going to look at Jurassic World Rebirth and what to do when things go wrong, very, very wrong. And so if you ever have things go wrong in your life, which is kind of a common denominator in all of our lives, right? We have things go wrong at times. You're going to want to come back and be a part of next weekend as we look at how to lean into God and who God is in the midst of those moments when things go wrong. Now, today, Mufasa The Lion King. How many of you grew up with The Lion King a part of your life? Make some noise if that was like a part of your upbringing, in your home, on the TV, the movies. Make some noise if you've ever seen Lion King on Broadway. Who's seen Lion King on Broadway? I've seen Lion King on Broadway. Yeah, a few of you. Did you realize this is the highest grossing show ever on Broadway? Lion King, third longest running show on Broadway. So, I mean, this storyline is really, really powerful. In fact, a couple fun facts. I went just kind of researching, what's unique about this movie. Let me give a couple of them to you. Here's an interesting one. Pumbaa, who's in this movie, first Disney character ever to let one rip on screen. First one to ever have gas, fart, whatever you want to call it. First time Disney ever did that, it was Pumbaa right here. This was fascinating. Do you realize that Mufasa and the Lion King are loosely connected to Shakespeare's Hamlet? And so Simba's Hamlet, Mufasa's King Hamlet, and Scar kind of takes on the role of Claudius. So that's fascinating. And then I think Lion King is responsible for the number one stadium phenomenon over the last 20, 25 years, which is the Simba Cam. Have you ever, make some noise if you've been on the Simba Cam. Anybody have been there? My son would never let me do it. I'm like, hey, I know you're 15, but I'd really like to, hoist you up there. So this movie's had a lot of impact on our culture. And this particular one that came out early this year, it really is the prequel to the original Lion King. And this is where Rafiki, who's kind of the old wise guy, he tells the story, the legend of Mufasa to Mufasa's granddaughter, Kiara. And so it's told through kind of flashbacks. And so we start this story where Mufasa's a cub and he's lost from his family during a flood. And he finds himself alone. And Taka, who eventually becomes Scar, actually rescues him. And he's kind of the heir to the throne in the Lion Pride. And this kind of sets in motion this journey, this extensive journey of this group of misfits really trying to kind of figure out their destiny and their place of belonging in the circle of life. Now, we've all had that moment, right? Where we're trying to figure out our belonging. Where do we belong? Where's our place? And naturally, sometimes we feel like outsiders. And so what we tend to do is we naturally surround ourselves with people who are like us, right? And this goes all the way back to junior high. Some of you are in junior high right now. Some of us, it's a long ways back. But we probably all can remember walking by the table with the jocks, right? Or maybe there's the preps table or the drama club or the math table. Some of you look like you were part of the stoners table. Maybe the hipsters, goths. I'm just kidding. You don't really look that way. But it's crazy because there's tables and there's different groups. My school had the Christian table was one of the tables, and I would go to that sometimes. I was a pastor's kid. I wasn't necessarily a Christian at that point in my life, a Jesus follower, but I would sit at the Christian table at times. They would say weird things sometimes. I really still to this day can't stand this phrase. I'd hear they'd go, oh, that's such a God thing, such a God thing. I was praying we'd have the square pizza today for lunch. Oh, we are, it's such a God thing. I'm like, they serve square pizza every day, right? I mean, that's not abnormal, right? And so, but there was a girl one time that was at the Christian table that I really liked, and so I decided to start hanging out there. And my friend, he was pushing me. He's like, man, Curt, you got to ask her out. So that was in the time when you do it on a note, you put a little checkbox, yes or no, right? And so I gave her the note, and she gave it back to me, and she said, God told me to tell you no. I'm like, wow. No would have been devastating enough, but the creator of the universe told me no. I mean, that was super, super devastating. And so, and you kind of think that ends when it gets to high school, right? But it doesn't. And you think it ends when it gets to adult life, but it doesn't. Because we all are trying to find our place, find our people. And we begin to see, okay, who's our crew? And when we figure that out, that also delineates who's not our crew. And this is part of what happens in this movie with Mufasa. So Taka saves Mufasa from this flood and takes him home, and his mom says, oh, your dad, Taka, your dad does not like strays. He's not going to let a stray join our pride. And Mufasa's, he's a young cub. He's a little offended. He's like, I'm not a stray. He's like, I'm just lost. I'm alone. Can you tell me where home is? And Esha, Taka's mom, just lands this crazy powerful line, which we don't have time to dig into, but she says, to be lost is to learn the way. Think about that for a moment. To be lost is to learn the way. But then his father shows up, Obasi. He's kind of the king of the Lion Pride at the time. And he says, hey, we don't associate with outsiders. You saw that in the trailer right there. And this is kind of, as we navigate this in our lives, this is kind of how we do this at times. In fact, there is an author named Richard Beck. He's also a professor. And in his book, he talks about this thing called the moral circle. And so, and this kind of defines how we live this out in life. The moral circle, let's just imagine this is you right here, all right? And then the people around you are your moral circle, all right? So these are people you include, and a lot of times they're people that think like you and look like you and have the same background as you, the same worldview as you, and so that becomes our moral circle. And what happens is, we begin to segment ourselves politically. It's like if you affiliate with my party, then you're in. If you don't, then you're out. We segment ourselves, by sexual orientation and identity, and if you see the world the way I see it, you're in. If you don't see the way the world I see it, you're out. We do it by race. We do it by religion. In fact, Christians are known for doing this, like creating all these little subcultures and these little bubbles, if you will, and spheres and groups that just are like, well, if you don't believe like us, and you can't be a part of us, and so that's just kind of crazy. And then we demonize anyone that's not in our group, that's on the outside, like they're separate, they're not a part of us. We do it by news channels, Fox News, CNN, right? I mean, you're like, woo, man, if you don't do my thing, then... And so the challenge that we're going to kind of learn from this movie, and I think from Jesus today, we're going to take a look at a story from the life of Jesus, and we're going to discover he wasn't like that. All right, and so, and this is challenging. It's one of the more difficult things when you come, close to the life of Jesus, because, we kind of want to know what circle we fit in. And that's what Mufasa is trying to figure out. Like, where do I fit? Because I'm out here on my own. And we want to figure who my people are, who my group is. But in doing that, we also can identify who's not in my group. And yet, Jesus constantly broke through those kinds of barriers. He basically invited all kinds of people into his circle, into his orbit. In fact, he offered seats to people that you and I would just be like, I don't know. I mean, I just don't know that kind of person would be the kind of person Jesus would want in his circle. And let me just ask you, do you think this was a first century thing? Maybe a 21st century thing too, you think? Maybe. Yeah, I can tell by the awkwardness a bit that I think we probably all agree that that's still something today, right? And our community continues to become more and more diverse, but it seems like our society simultaneously is like more and more polarized, right? More and more segmented, segregated, homogeneous. And even our government is stymied on this. I mean, it used to be you'd go to elections and it was pretty much, contests on policies. But now it comes down to like, well, if you're not with me, then I hate you. And it just segments. In fact, this is fascinating. I heard recently that back in 1976, in the political election, the presidential election 1976, which it's indifferent who won that year. That's inconsequential, doesn't really apply to this. But back in 1976, that 1 out of 4 Americans, 25% of Americans, lived in a county that won the presidential election by a landslide. Fast forward to 2016, 2 election cycles ago, get this, 80% of people lived in a county that won by a landslide, right? 55% increase, which just kind of boldly indicates that we're finding people like us. We clump together, all right, with people that think like us and look like us. And we all do it. I do it. You do it. We all do it. We're all guilty of this because we want people to reaffirm things we already believe or narratives we hear on the news cycles, and it just further segments our culture. And see, none of this would be a problem except for the fact that it's a problem to Jesus, as we're going to find out right here, because he didn't seem to live like this. So he was actually quite adept at actually connecting with people, having civil, terrific conversations with people that weren't like him at all, different than him, that believed different, acted different, had different orientations than him. And so today we're going to look at one of these stories, and we're going to take a look at how it parallels this story of Mufasa. And I'm going to draw out some connections later on here, but I want us to start with this story from Jesus. This is going to be familiar to some of you, and others of you, you might know bits and pieces of it, but it's crazy how it mirrors the sense of somebody being on the outside looking in, trying to find their place of belonging like we see in this movie. And as uncomfortable as this story even makes us at times, I just think we have to evaluate and say, okay, where am I at in this picture right here? Now, if you're not a Christian, if you're not a Jesus follower, in fact, the thing we look at may be the very thing that drives you crazy. It drives me crazy at times. But let me just say to you, first of all, we're so excited you're here. All right, Crosspoint's a place that is built for you to kind of explore, and we consider it an honor, whether you're tuning in online, whether you're here, in our seats, that you would trust us enough to walk in to this space. And so you can play along if you want. You might ask, what would it look like if I were to model some of the things Jesus, demonstrates here? So this story begins in the Gospel of John chapter 4, and the person writing this is one of Jesus' best friends, closest followers, a guy by the name of John. Here's what he says. He says, so he, meaning Jesus, left Judea And he departed again, meaning he was going back again. He'd been there many times to this area known as Galilee. And so he's giving us some context. He's like, you got to understand a little bit about Middle Eastern culture. All right, a little geography lesson right here. He says he had to pass through this area known as Samaria. Now, a lot of scholars would hear that and they go, well, that's not exactly true. He didn't have to pass through that way, which is actually true. And so, but the common path that people took, they would actually, instead of going through Samaria, even though that was the shortest route, they would actually go along Samaria, like they just teeter on the border right along the Jordan River, and they kind of go skirt all the way down to the bottom, and then they barely go through the bottom corner of Samaria. And you're like, well, why would they do that? Well, because they didn't like the people in Samaria. All right, so the most direct route was to go through it, but most people didn't go that way. They went another way. And so Jesus is trying to tell us something, even in giving us this detail right here, by the path he took to Galilee. All right, and one of my favorite titles, by the way, of Jesus, of who Jesus is, we get it from a guy in the New Testament named Paul. He wrote a whole bunch of letters to early first century churches. And he says that Jesus is the image of the invisible God. I love that. I love that. Because sometimes it's frustrating. Like, well, what does God look like? What's God like? Well, Paul says Jesus is the image of the invisible God. We say this all the time around here. If you want to know what God is like, if you're like, okay, how would he handle this situation? Just follow Jesus through the Gospels. Just take a look at Jesus, because he's the image of the invisible God. If you want to know what God's thinking or how he would treat a situation or treat a person, just watch Jesus. Follow Jesus through the Gospels, because Jesus is the image of the invisible God. All right, so the story continues. It says, so he came to a town called Sychar, or Sychar. You can say however you want. You do you on that, okay? Near the field that Jacob had given his son Joseph. So he gives us some context. He's given details. He next says Jacob's well was there. So he's saying, hey, I just want you to know this is a real place. All right, I'm not making this up. This is a real place. There's real landmarks here. Jacob's well was there. So Jesus, wearied as he was from his journey, was sitting beside a well, and it was about the 6th hour, which means it was noon. Now, why was he telling us what time of day it was right here? This is kind of a big deal right here, all right? Because anyone who had been to that part of the world, he's just wanting the rest of us who haven't been there to know that this was the hottest part of the day. Meaning, if you've ever been to Phoenix, all right, in the middle of the day, it's like you're standing on the surface of the sun, right? Like you feel like you're pretty much right there. That's what it's like to be in the Middle East in the middle of the day. And so, if you want to know, why this person's coming out in the middle of the day, it's usually because nobody else is out. It's usually because they don't want to interface with people. They don't want to be ridiculed again. They're probably an outsider, all right? They don't want to be reminded that they really don't have a community that they fit into, so they're going to go to the well when they can be all alone and nobody's going to be there. And then Jesus asked this question of this woman right here. It says, when the Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, will you give me a drink? Now, the Samaritan woman was struck with kind of how awkward this was, because Jesus did something that just normally a man wouldn't have this kind of conversation with a woman at that particular time. And we don't have all the context on this, so John kind of helps us out right here. He goes on, he says, the Samaritan woman said to him, you are a Jew, but I'm a Samaritan. How can you ask me for a drink? And it's almost as if John knew right here, hey, there's going to come a day when people are going to be reading this, and they're going to have no idea the context of all the history that's gone down between the Jews and the Samaritans. All right, there's going to be a day where nobody really knows, all the bad blood between the Jews and the Samaritans. Nobody really knows the turmoil and all the dirty things that have happened between the Jews and the Samaritans. So he's kind of letting us in on this, and then he adds this little thing in parentheses. He says, for the Jews do not associate with Samaritans. So he's like, yeah, they don't get along. All right, they generally they're outsiders to each other. But see, Jesus doesn't play by man-made rules. All right, this woman's kind of caught off guard right here. She kind of looks around. She's like, you talking to me? And Jesus is like, yeah, I'm talking to you. Like, you're the only one here. He's like, we're the only two here. I mean, the level of social no-nos that Jesus just kind of busts through right here is like crazy. It's astounding. The social norms that Jesus is just kind of like breaking down, I mean, they are stacked like way deep right here in this moment. I mean, a Jewish man talking to a Samaritan woman. I mean, a man usually wouldn't have talked to a woman that wasn't his wife. We were going to learn some of the details of her life. I mean, definitely would have been talking to a woman like this. Definitely when the religious leaders hear that Jesus was talking to this woman, I mean, he's breaking through all kinds of barriers right here. But see, Jesus is a little bit different than most people expected back in the first century. He's honestly different than we expect. And he's definitely different than the religious people expected. So it says, Jesus answered her and said, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that's saying to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. So in this moment, Jesus is clearly like changing the context of the conversation. All right, he's not talking about physical needs anymore, like you're just physically thirsty. He's digging deeper. And he's basically like, hey, there's a kind of appetite that we all have. We long for certain things. And Jesus says, I can meet that. But this woman is not picking up on his language right here. So the woman said to him, sir, you have nothing to draw the water with. All right, the well is deep. I mean, how are you going to get the water out of there? Where do you think you're going to get that living water? And so he explains to her in more detail. He says, everyone who drinks of this water is going to be thirsty again, but everyone who drinks of the water that I will give to them will never be thirsty. And then he explains it this way. He says, indeed, the water that I will give him will become in him a spring of water welling up. And then he uses this phrase that he talks about of eternal life, like something beyond this life. Over and over again, Jesus in this little sequence here and the short time before, he's talking about like, hey, I didn't come for the healthy. I didn't come for the people who said, hey, I don't need anything. He said, no, I came for the sick. I came for the people who know they need a doctor. I didn't come for the people who didn't know that they were thirsty or needed anything in life. He said, no, I came for those that are thirsting after something, that are in need of a saving. And he looks at this woman. He says, hey, listen, I'm here for you. I'm here for you. He says, you may not find another place in this community where you fit in, where you find your place of belonging, all right? But the God of the universe is right here. I mean, he's not saying this out loud, but he's in essence presenting to her, I'm the picture of the invisible God, and I'm just letting you know you're invited to our circle. Now, how should this lady respond to this? Like, what should she do? Should she sit down and just be like, oh my gosh? Like, should she say thank you? She's probably thinking what you might be thinking. Okay, I don't really know why we're having this conversation. Like, he's offering me something only God can offer, but he's offering it to me. He must not know who I am. All right, he must not know my backstory. I mean, like if he knew my backstory, he'd be inviting me to the Jerry Springer show, right? Not like, hey, have a seat with me right here. And then he lets her in on this little secret right here, that he knows her past. He says, hey, real quick, just go call your husband to come here. Go get your husband and we can all have a conversation together. All right? And she goes, here we go. And she's like, sir, I have no husband. Yeah. She's like, that's me right there. I'm hanging out with all the single ladies. Yeah, we only gave you, this is like lift the spirit a little bit right there, right? We only gave you 6 seconds because we'll get flagged on Facebook if we play more than that. We'll have to pay royalties, this whole thing. So, but she's like, no, I don't even have a husband. He says to her, you're right when you say you have no husband. In fact, you've had 5 husbands and the man you're now with is not your husband. What you have said is true. I mean, Jesus is letting her know, hey, I know who you are. All right, we all know who you are. But understand, your past is not getting in the way of me extending an invitation for you to sit at my table. Right? To have a place in my orbit right here. Right? Your past doesn't need to get in the way of you accepting that invitation. I mean, this lady was a complete social outcast. I mean, she'd been marked as immoral. I mean, she's an unmarried woman. She's had all these open relationships. She's on like the 6th one now, right? I mean, the scarlet A would have been put on her chest like not once, twice, 3, not even 4 times, multiple times. In this culture and community, they probably had kicked her out. That's why she's coming to the well at noon. All right, and how do you think this woman thought that God viewed her? Just think about that. Because see, we try to stack up all the things we've done, right? We're like, well, I try to be a good person, and I go to church, I attend church. Let's put that on my ledger sheet. I'm generous with other people, which I think Jesus would go, awesome, that's great. Like we should all have an answer to how we're being generous and using our life to bless other people. Keep it up, that's great. But he'd be like, but I still know all your skeletons, right? I still know what happened in college. I know what happened at spring break. Right? I know about Daytona. Some of you are like, why are you always throwing shade on Daytona? Okay, I know about Panama City, all right? Whatever it is. I know about the addiction. I know about the relationship, all right? I know about the habit. I mean, all the stuff everybody else doesn't really sense and it's under the surface. Jesus is like, none of that is hidden from me. But that doesn't mean, it has nothing to do with me extending an invitation to you. I'm still asking. And this lady, look at what she says. She says, Sir, the woman said, I can see that you're a prophet. And Jesus is like, I'm a little more than a prophet. She says, I know the Messiah, the Christ, is coming. And when he comes, he's going to explain all this to us. What she's basically doing right here, she's trying to get out of this conversation, right? She's like, okay, the Messiah's coming. He's going to explain it all, but I got to go. This got really awkward really, really quickly. And Jesus just says in love and compassion to her right here, he says, I am the one speaking to you. I am he. He's like, that's me. And he's letting her know, like, God and I are one. Right? I'm here. Right? I'm the image of the invisible God. And I'm here to let you know that your past doesn't disqualify you. I'm here to let you know that you can, you still be in on this, all right? You can accept my invitation. I mean, this shatters all of our paradigms about who this person Jesus is. I love this story. I love this movie because it's like what this church, Crosspoint, is built on right here. It shatters our ideas of who's like included in God's economy and who isn't. It shatters this woman's idea about what she thought about God. It shatters what she thought God thought about her. And how do we know this? Well, take a look at what she says next. It says, then leaving her water jar, the woman went back to town. And she started telling people stuff. I mean, the very thing she came for, she came to get water, but all of a sudden she was so amazed at what Jesus did. She's like, man, I didn't even need that water. I mean, I got living water. And I think Jesus is like, you're still going to be thirsty. You're probably still going to need that water. All right, we'll get back to that later. But this is going to be awesome. I mean, you got something way deeper than that you just got right here. So she goes to town and says, hey, come and see a man who told me about everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah? Right? She goes and lets everybody know. And she's like, hey, would you come? Because if he invited me, he certainly would invite you. She says, come see this man who told me everything I did. And I think people are like, did he tell you everything that you did? Like, did he talk about that fourth husband? Remember the fourth husband? I mean, did he talk about that? She's like, he talked about that. He talked about all of it. All of it. All right? It was amazing. And he offered me an invitation of a lifetime to be part of his circle. Now, this is where this story has these fascinating parallels to this movie that we're looking at, Mufasa. And I think it's why we're inspired by movies like this, because we see these movies where there are outcasts and there's people who aren't included and figures that are on the outskirts, and they wonder if there's ever going to be a place for them. And we long to be a part of communities that are inclusive. They say, no, there's a seat here for everyone, because we long to be a part of this kind of circle. This is where we see the character of God reflected in this very scene. In fact, I'm going to show you a scene. I want to show you kind of this tender moment between Kiara, who is Mufasa's granddaughter, and the wise storyteller Rafiki, as he's explaining what it means and why there's outsiders. Take a look at this. There's always ultimate outsiders, right? Come to blow the party. But maybe that's you. Maybe you're here and you're just like, man, I'm that person. I'm that ultimate outsider. I mean, I've always wondered if there's a place for me. Or maybe you've been on the inside and you're just beginning to realize, wow, okay, Jesus, he kind of burst like my idea of like who he is and like what it means. And you know what this inspires me to do? This movie's inspired me, but this story from Jesus too. And I want to encourage you to maybe consider this, to be honest with yourself and to just kind of think about, okay, who is in my orbits? All right, maybe you work with someone that is from a different culture. Maybe you work with someone from a different lifestyle, or go to school with someone whose life or orientation is different than you. And you just think, man, this person normally wouldn't be a part of my group. All right, I just wonder if Jesus is pushing us as we look at this movie, but also the story from his life, to evaluate, okay, who is in my circles? All right, I think this would be a really healthy thing, especially in light of where we are in our world, all the just the way our culture is so segmented, to just make the choice, say, I'm going to be really honest about like my circles in my life. In fact, this is one of our next steps this weekend. You might just go, let me do some honest reflection on who actually do I include in my circles. It's be a really good exercise to say, okay, who informs the boundaries of the circles of my life? I mean, is it skin color? Is it socioeconomic status? Is it, sexual orientation? Is it, some kind of life experience or background or education or, what neighborhood they live in or what part of town they're from? I just think it's a worthy question to ask, okay, who is welcome in my circle? All right, and if you're like me, it's easy to go, well, I include most people in my circle. Let me give you a little different way to ask that question, because this might help you get a little clearer on that. So imagine you're sitting on a plane, like you're getting ready to go somewhere, you're getting on a plane. Ask the question this way, who do you not want to come sit next to you when you're on a plane? All right, so you're sitting there on a plane, the middle seat's open, and all of a sudden they're about to shut the door, and here comes somebody walking down the aisle. It could have been my family a few years ago when I had all these young kids. We had 4 young kids, and you're like, oh God, please help that guy and his 4 kids walk by the empty seats next to me, right? Or any number of people, but seriously, who is it that you're just like when I'm sitting on that plane and I've got this empty seat next to me that I'm going, okay, I really hope they keep on walking past me. All right? Because I think Jesus, he's, maybe calling us through these stories to evaluate and ask that question. In fact, let me illustrate it this way. Let's get back to Richard Beck and this whole idea of the moral circle. All right? So let's just imagine this is you right here. And Richard Beck, he actually walks this out. He's a professor. He walks this out in his classes because there's a moral dilemma right here that we all have to face. And so again, this is you right here, all right? People around you are your moral circle. So these are usually people that think like us and act like us and have the same worldview as us and, have the same background. And so that's our circle, all right? And I want to attempt to challenge that, our circles for a moment, all right? So I'm going to add to this illustration. How many of you, make some noise if you have ever waited tables? Ever been a waiter, server? I'm going to make noise. I used to be a server, waiter. So you know what that's like. You know the difficulty that comes when you are a server waiting tables, right? And then there's some of you, I'm not going to ask you to make some noise, but then there's others of you who were the difficult person for the waiter who was waiting tables, right? So we all have a part in this story right here, all right? So let's just say this server is a good friend of yours, all right? Maybe a brother, a friend, an uncle, a mother, whoever, and you're like, hey, I'm going to go to their restaurant. They're working. I'm going to go see their place. Hopefully we'll be served by them. And so you get there and everything goes wrong. So you order steak and they bring you fish. And you order, Diet Coke and they bring you a Pepsi. And you order sweet tea and they bring you unsweet tea. And you're like, what? That's the worst thing ever in Indiana, right? So, you're like, what's going on right here? And what do you say? You probably go, well, listen, the drinks aren't that big a deal. Listen, water, we don't even need water. We don't even need drinks. We're fine, right? Everything's fine. We're going to be just fine, right? That's how we respond in that moment. You're great. And how do you tip in that moment? You know how you tip? You over tip, right? You're like, my word, they must be having a really bad day. This seems like they're struggling a bit today. Are you feeling okay? You leave a good tip, right? Because you're like, I want to make sure they're encouraged. Now, here's where the moral dilemma comes in. Let me flip the script on this for a moment. All right, so let's say, for example, you have no idea who your server is. All right, you've never met them. You don't know their life story. You don't know what kind of things they've had to overcome in their life. You know nothing about them. All you know is this experience at this restaurant has been terrible. All right, horrible. How do you tip? Well, as you're going through the terrible experiences, you're probably doing all these mental gymnastics and your tip is going down, down, down. Right? Some of you are going like, hey, we're paying for this right here. We came for a good time. This is ridiculous. And some of you are going out to eat after service today. And so I hope you remember this illustration. Like when you go out today, your servers would be thankful for this. All right. So we've all been there too, right? I've done that. I've done this. But here's the question. Let me ask you this. Why do we have 2 different types of behavior for 2 different people? Because, see, one of them is your mom, your brother, your friend. You know them. You know their story. All right? And we're kind to people who are, are kind. But the other person is somebody's brother and somebody's mother and somebody's, friend. See, it seems that Jesus, through this story, and Rafiki, through the story of Mufasa, is trying to help us see that we all have a moral circle and people that are like us, they're included. And if you're not like me, then you're kind of on the outside and we don't want to let you in. We're afraid of what's going to happen if we do. And maybe Jesus is just saying to us right here, would you broaden your circle? Right? What would it look like for you to stretch out your circle? Right? What would it look like to make the decision to just say, based on the fact that every single person that I encounter in life is a divine image bearer. of God. Like their worth isn't based on who they are, their worth is based on whose they are. Like they're actually a child of God, somebody God had a plan and put here on the earth. What if we treated people based on that? I want to show you another scene from this film. And this is a little more unique because we have a few of these because this film's been out a little longer. And this is a few years later. Mufasa, he's now stepping in to be the king of this lion pride, and he's establishing a kingdom that's for everyone. I think this scene just like really captures my heart because I think it's what we all long to be a part of. I think it reminds us of what God does for us. He says, hey, we should be including everyone in this. Take a look at this right here. I love that phrase where it says every being has a place in the circle of life. I love this. I think this is why we're drawn to movies like this. So like I want to be a part of that world right there. See, here's what I believe. I believe your view of God will be as small as your circle. And if you keep your circle small, unfortunately, your view of God is going to be that small. And see, what I've learned over the course of my lifetime is that, and maybe you can try this out as well, that I found that when I expand my circle, when I make room for people that don't always see life the way that I see life, and my view of God actually grows. It doesn't make my faith smaller. You invite people into that circle, I'm telling you, it grows your faith. It makes your view of God bigger. And I don't want to miss out on that. I don't want you to miss out on that. And I want God to use me in those moments where I can actually have the opportunity to have influence, to help other people see what he's like, that I otherwise may never have the opportunity to influence, for them to be able to see what he actually feels about them. And so, this starts with that question. Maybe it's just asking the question this week, okay, how do I define my circle? How big is my circle? What might God be pushing me on in my circle? For some of us, the next step this week might be saying, gosh, I didn't realize that the circle's big enough to include me. Maybe you've been hanging around a while and you're like, man, Curt, if you saw my life and you knew what I did last week and so on and so forth, hey, God, his circle includes you. And we learn this from the movie and we get inspired from it, but we also see it from the life of Jesus. But then perhaps there's others of us who are here today, we've never really seen that we would be included in God's circle. We could never be included in his spiritual family. And that's what's so cool about this movie, Mufasa, is Mufasa says, no, I'm making room for everyone. And we see this in the story of Jesus. We see the expression of an invisible God in the life of Jesus say, no, I made room, even for you who feels like there's no place for you to belong. So I want to encourage you to just think through, if that's you this weekend, I want to encourage you to think through what perhaps your next step is this weekend. There's multiple next steps, but if you're newer to church, newer to faith, maybe your next step is just coming back next weekend. Maybe it's coming back for Jurassic World, saying, hey, I'm going to just keep hanging around, just see what God continues to present and reveal to me about who he is. Maybe it's joining our Starting Point class. This is one of our fall groups that's going on 6 weeks, and it's a great opportunity for anybody who's new to faith or restarting faith, or you have questions about faith. This whole group is going to be people that are just in the same place. I've taught this class so many times. It's just magical. Abby's going to be teaching this class. You're going to have the chance to be with one of our pastors and just really grow in who God is and how you fit into his story and ask questions. And so maybe you want to join that class. Maybe it's even taking a step. Maybe your step is just taking one step closer to who God is and realizing, okay, he made room for me. And I actually have a place because he's the one that gave the invitation, not because of anything I've done, but truly just simply because of his character. And then that can happen actually today. In fact, let me pray for us toward that end. Heavenly Father, thank you for stories like this. Mufasa, who's raised and grows and has this burden to say, hey, I want to be a part of including everyone. I want everybody to feel value, to have a place to belong, a place to call home. God, we thank you for these stories of Jesus that kind of break our stereotypes of what it means to be part of his spiritual family. He was doing this back in the first century. We're still doing it here in the 21st century. And for some of us, God, we're just seeing that perhaps that there's room in this family for us. And maybe we're just, one step at a time, taking steps into that. And God, I just pray that for whoever might be taking those steps, God, would you just continue to give them eyes to hear, to see, and ears to hear your voice and how you continue to make a place for them. God, for those of us who perhaps as we evaluate our circles, would say, yeah, my circle's not real big. God, I pray that you would expand it this week. As we reflect on this, help us to really reflect on how can I expand the boundaries of my circle? Because we know when we expand those boundaries, we actually expand our awareness of you. And so, God, I just pray that even as we sing this next song, that you would just wash over us. You'd maybe bring us exactly what we need. You would help us to see that we're part of what you're doing, that you can actually bring a healing to our lives, even those places that make us feel at times like we're unworthy or we're outcasts, and that we have the opportunity to actually take this to others. So help us to be those kinds of people this week. And we pray these things according to your character in your name, Jesus. Amen. All right, let's go ahead and stand. The band's going to lead us in one more song, and it's kind of a prayer that we're going to pray for each other, but it's really our prayer for you as we go, that God's Spirit would wash over us and just bring what we need and that healing we need as we go into the week this week. Let's sing together.
Over every heart and every mind, 'cause I know there is peace within your presence. I speak Jesus. I just want to speak the name of Jesus till every dark addiction starts to break, declaring there is hope and there is freedom. I speak Jesus. Your name is power, your name is healing, your name is life. Break every stronghold, shine through the shadows, burn like a fire. I just want to speak the name of Jesus over fear and all anxiety, to every soul held captive by depression. I speak Jesus. Your name is power, your name is healing, your name is life. Break every stronghold, shine through the shadows, burn like a fire. Oh, your name is power, your name is power, your name is healing, your name is life. Break every stronghold, shine through the shadows, burn like a fire. Shout Jesus from the mountains, and Jesus in the streets, and Jesus in the darkness over every enemy. And Jesus for my family, I speak the holy name, Jesus. Shout Jesus from the mountains, and Jesus in the streets. Oh, Jesus in the darkness over every enemy. And Jesus for my family, I speak the holy name, Jesus. 'Cause your every heart and every mind. 'Cause I know there is peace within your presence. I speak Jesus. Oh, shout Jesus from the mountains, and Jesus in the streets. Oh, Jesus in the darkness over every enemy. And Jesus for my family, I speak the holy name of Jesus. Oh, shout Jesus from the mountains, and Jesus in the streets. Oh, Jesus in the darkness over every enemy. And Jesus for my family, I speak the holy name, Jesus.
Hey, thanks again for joining us today. That is our prayer for you this week, that you would know and feel the healing, the power, the life that this woman at the well experienced from Jesus. It's real and it's available right here waiting for you as well. Now, your experience doesn't have to stop here. If you'd like to dive deeper beyond the weekend experience, one of the greatest ways to do that is to get in a circle with people who are headed in the same direction. So if you're looking to get connected with other people and to grow, the best way to do that around here is to join a group. Groups are small gatherings that meet every 1 to 2 weeks, digitally and in person. Small groups are a place to share community and grow together. And we have a number of early fall growth groups that are kicking off this next week. So check out these on your group page, where you'll also find groups like Starting Point for those who are new to faith, and the new men's group First Fridays, plus study groups, small groups that connect on the weekend themes. Lots of options and ways to get more connected. Before we go, a quick shout out to those of you who are givers. Thank you for all of the ways that you invest in the lives of people through Crosspoint. None of this happens without your generosity through the Joy Box. And if you're not a giver but you'd like to become one, you can donate at this QR code to be a part of the amazing group of people that fuel all of the goodness that comes out of this place. Thanks so much. Last but not least, if you would like someone to pray with you, we would love to do that. All you have to do is text the keyword "need prayer" to 317-834-7373, and our prayer team will give you a call this week. Thanks for joining us today. We can't wait to see you next time for the next installment of At the Movies.